honestly, the book in general is a lot shorter than I expected it to be. It's only a little over 300 pages, and with the It Girl last year, I was just really expecting another thick book from Ruth Ware, but this just feels so tiny in my hands and I'm so excited about it. But anyways, I'm only 40 pages in and I have had 2 very different experiences with this book already. So let me tell you about them. So much to say, actually. I never have this much to say in the first 40 pages of a book, but this is just bringing a lot to the table to discuss. First off, this is a killer opening of a book if you don't read the synopsis. I forgot the synopsis. I do this thing where I read the synopsis when a book is coming out that I hear about, when I'm interested in it. I put it on my most anticipated list. This in particular I pre-ordered, and then I forget the synopsis. I remove it from my brain and I trust past me that I was interested in it at one point so that when present me picks it up, I get to be surprised from the very beginning and I don't get too bogged down in the details, especially with thrillers or mysteries, because sometimes they give away too much in the synopsis. So if you can manage to go into this book without reading the synopsis and you just know you like Ruth Ware or you're willing to give Ruth Ware a chance, it is such a fun opening to figure out what's going on in the story. It is just done really, really well. Another experience that I have with the opening was, oh my goodness, I'm not gonna like this book at all. But don't worry, there's more. We're gonna go in a lot of different directions here. A lot happened in the first 40 pages. Yeah, I was worried that I wasn't going to like this at all because I'm gonna tell you what the book is about generally, but I won't give too many specific details so that you can get that same experience if you want of not knowing all the specific details of the setup of the story. But in this one, you are following a couple and they are in the beginning breaking into a building together. One of them is like on the ground actually doing the breaking in. One of them is like digitally phoned in and they do like the digital hacking and whatnot. And so in the beginning, you're jumped right in, you're following the woman who is running around the building, and it was so technical. It was so technically detailed of every little mechanism of how they were moving their body and maneuvering in different places in the building and the different alarms they were worried about and the different ways they were picking locks and thinking about digitally scanning key cards and the blueprints of the building. And it was just getting really bogged down in the details, which I feel like was a complaint many people had with One by One by Ruth Ware, which spent a lot of time talking about this company because it was all about this company who was on this retreat and it talked all about the business and there was so much marketing and business stuff in it and people were like, I don't care about any of that. This book has started to do some of that as well, just in terms of the technicalities of this person breaking in. And so I feel like Ruth Ware is a writer who likes to do her research and she likes to really immerse herself in the world she is building, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it does bog the story down a little bit. And so I was very nervous in the beginning. I started kind of skimming through some of those chunkier paragraphs to be like, all right, I get it. We're breaking into this specific room. I get it. We're trying to not break off this alarm. Understand. So I don't know if the whole book's going to be like that, but it was only really like the main beginning of the opening scene that was like that. And then it stopped doing that. So hopefully that won't become as much of an issue through the whole book, although that could very well be something that continues in the book that I'm gonna look out for. But then, okay, so you're following a couple who's breaking into a building and then situation is over, move on to the next scene. Not gonna give you the specifics of how things happen or who. I'm gonna keep it super vague so that you can have a fun experience with this one like I did. But one of the people in the couple ends up in a situation, I'll say. I'm gonna keep it as vague as possible. And the other one looks like a suspect for it, and then cue the story. That is what I've gotten to so far. It was such a fun opening. It was such a fun 40 pages. Once we got past all the technical details of the breaking into the building, I got so immersed and I loved it. And I feel like this really has potential to be a really, really fun book and give me another Ruth Ware book that I love, because I have not had a Ruth Ware book that I love in years. I've just been like okay with her stories for years, and this one I feel like could really be for me because it does seem like it's going to be more of a thriller with some mystery element to it for sure, I imagine, but it's like fast-paced. We're moving, we are going through the action of it. I feel like we're gonna have a very active main character, and I realize I could be eating my words by the next clip and it could go in a horrible direction. But as of now, I'm like, wow, those first 40 pages were fun. I am gripped with this book. I am looking forward to it. I think it's gonna be a really fun time. Alrighty, so I got 143 pages into the book last night, so I'm a little under halfway through, probably like 40-45% through 0 days, and I have more to say, but not nearly as much as I did in the first update. Through this section of the book, the plot has certainly accelerated. This is going to be a forward-moving plot, which I am excited about, rather than being a backwards-looking reflective mystery. Not that mysteries can't be moving forward too, but you know, that's just what I mean. Like, it feels like we're really moving forward, things are thrilling, circumstances are changing, characters are being introduced, but it's not reading super fast. And I feel like I'm being picky, maybe, and it's just been a while since I've read a Ruth Ware, so I can't really remember if this is something that is a common stylistic thing that she does, or if maybe this is just different from books I've been reading lately, and so it's kind of standing out to me. But it just feels like very moment to moment. There's a lot written. There's not like short vignette style chapters where it's just like scene, jump to next scene, jump to next scene. It's very much like the character is doing this, and I'm going to tell you every detail about it, and every detail about how they got to the next point, and every detail about how they got to the next point. And so it doesn't feel like we've covered a lot of ground. I feel like at this point in the book, we should be pretty accelerated in the plot, and we haven't moved super far. So I'm a little bit worried about that. It's feeling a little bit slow, but I'm still intrigued with the story and interested to see where it goes. I just thought I would maybe know more by now, or have more have happened, and looking back, I'm like, not much happened. I can't believe I'm 145 pages in. And yeah, that's really all I have to say at this point, because not too much more has happened. Oh, I guess something I can say is I do feel like Ruth Ware is doing a good job portraying very realistic reactions to things. I feel like this book could have easily skirted over the emotional processing part of things, but she's not doing that. She's really having your character go through the emotional process and feel a lot of real things and be really present in the processing of the emotion. And so I do like that. I think she's doing a good job with that. And now that is all I have to say. So I'm gonna read more. Hopefully more happens. Hopefully I have more to say, and I will see you soon. The rest of 0 days because the rest of the book went by pretty quickly, so I figured I would just go ahead and finish it off and then let you know my final thoughts on the book. I'm thinking since this book is already released, I also want to do a little bit of a spoiler section just to give you the full explanation of what happens in this book, and then I'm going to go into final thoughts. I'm kind of trying to figure out how to do these single book reviews or single book reading vlogs in a way that I feel best about doing them, because I've been doing more of them lately and I never know spoilers or not, but when a book's already out, I feel like it's good to do a spoiler section. So if you read the book and you're looking for a refresher, or if you haven't read the book and you just want to know what happens, or if you're considering reading the book and you're okay reading the spoilers, you have a place to go to hear everything that happens in this book. So first I'm going to do a spoiler section where I explain generally just what happens in the book in about a minute or two, and then I will go into my final thoughts about the book. So if you want to skip the spoiler section, you can either skip to where you no longer see the spoiler banner on the screen, or I will also have it chaptered out in timestamps in the video as well, so you can skip to the next chapter just to get back to the non-spoilery section. I was very vague about this book from the beginning, and that's because I really enjoyed jumping into it, not knowing what I was getting into, and seeing the little surprises in the beginning. So the main characters you're following are Jack and Gabe. Jack is a woman, Gabe is a man. They are married, and they are penetration testers, which means they test if they can break into buildings, and they find like holes in companies' security plans in their physical buildings and in their data structures. Jack is the one who breaks in physically to the buildings. Gabe is the one who breaks in through all of the digital data techie side of the things. In the very beginning, they're breaking into a building, and Jack does get caught. She ends up getting arrested for a bit. That happens a lot, and then they're just like, it's okay, we can show you, like, this was just a thing we do for our company. But she gets delayed for a couple hours getting home, and when she gets home, she finds that Gabe is slumped over his computer with his throat slit. Someone has killed her husband, and she quickly becomes the main suspect, and she feels like the only option she has is to run away from the cops. She's being interrogated at one point, and she can hear them talking in the hall, and she knows that she's going to be arrested, and she's like, I gotta go. I know how to escape buildings, so I'm gonna escape this one, and I'm gonna go on the run, and I'm gonna go try to figure out who is responsible for my husband's murder, because I know it's not me, and I will just solve the crime for them to clear my own name and to get justice for my husband's murder. So for much of the book, she's just kind of trying to make her way through London and the surrounding areas, trying to find places to sleep, trying to find ways to get access to different digital things without exposing where she is to the police, because she's trying to stay hidden and under the radar, but she's also still trying to solve a crime at the same time. One of the people who helps her is her sister Hel, who is just a supportive figure in her life. Another person who helps helps her is this guy Cole, who was Gabe's best friend. But it turns out Cole is not that good of a guy because, unsurprisingly, he ends up being the one who is mostly responsible for Gabe's murder. Cole worked at this tech company and he was responsible for building these apps, specifically apps around home security and also parents being able to monitor their children's devices and locations and all of those things. And the main thing behind this book, why it's called Zero Day, is because of these things called zero-day exploits, which I was not really familiar with, but apparently it has something to do with when engineers or developers or anyone really finds a patch in someone's security system. Like they find a breach in the security system of the development of a product or an app or some kind of digital service, but they find it before the original software developers even know it exists, so they have 0 days to fix it, hence the term zero-day exploit. And essentially Gabe ended up stumbling upon one of those in an app that Cole had built, and Gabe was going to do the ethical thing and report that because that's just something he often does. But Cole, it seems like, I wasn't ever really sure, like he either intentionally built that or he knew about it and he was leveraging that because he was working with some bad people who came to him about it, and black market stuff and bad men who come and kill people for things. And basically that's the whole situation that got Gabe murdered. I probably didn't explain it the most clearly, and that's because I didn't understand it the most clearly, which we're going to talk about that in my final thoughts and how I fully felt about the book. But ultimately Jack is able to run away long enough to solve this, to understand that it was Cole who was responsible. She ends up putting this big tweet out about what happened, and then she live records Cole's confession, and so that's what's able to get her cleared by the police. She's also severely injured throughout the book because she hurts her side. She stabs herself over a fence and her wound is hurting the whole time. And so at the end of the book, when she's finally saved, she has to go have surgery. She wakes up from surgery and she finds out everything's good, you're in the clear, Cole's gonna be arrested. And then the epilogue of the book is a year later. Jack was actually pregnant the whole time, and so now she has a baby. It was Gabe's baby, of course. She names the baby Gabby. And Cole has been found hanged in prison. You don't know if he killed himself or if someone else killed him. Could go either way. You kind of insinuate that someone else killed him. But that's the end of the book. Happily ever after. Jack is now friends with the cop who was pursuing her the whole time, and she's just living her life the best she can with her baby and trying to move forward in life. So those were the full spoilers of what happened. I'm going to move into the final section now, where I will go back to talking about my final thoughts of the book. So overall, I would say I enjoyed my experience with this book, but I pretty much almost equally had things that I enjoyed and things that I didn't enjoy. I probably enjoyed things a little bit more, but I'll talk you through the things that I liked in this book, the things that I maybe didn't like so much, and then how I settled on my final rating. For the things that I liked, the first one is the writing style of the book. I found the writing style to be engaging. I like Ruth Ware's writing style. I knew that already, and so that wasn't a surprise to me, but just generally I liked the way that the book was written. I also really liked Jack as a main character. I felt like she was a great main character to carry the story forward. I really appreciated how active she was as a main character. She didn't sit there passively boo-hooing, trying to make other people solve her problems. She very actively went and pursued her own story to solve her own problems, even though she was going through so many different emotions and so many different physical ailments. She just had a lot of mental and physical resilience, and I felt like she was really easy to root for, and she really helped carry the story forward. Also, because of her background and her job of what she does with breaking into buildings, she had a lot of really interesting skills that helped move her through the story, and that was interesting to see her thought process and how her unique background helped her out in this circumstance. Also, just kind of a more wholesome aspect of this book that I enjoyed is Jack received a lot of help from strangers along the way, and it was just a lot of these little really humane moments where someone just sees someone struggling and asks if they can help them out in any way, or just foots the bill or finds a way to help take them to the place they need to go. And I just thought that was really nice to see this community of people around her supporting her, even though they don't know her. And I really like how that mirrored the situation that got her into this in the first place in the book, where a stranger was responsible for a tragedy. And it starts with this idea of how could a human be so cruel who you don't even know. But then you see the opposite side of that too, where humans can also be so good and supportive. And so I did like that wholesome aspect of the book. I liked a lot of the people she encountered in the story. And it was just a nice way to keep the story a little bit lighter, as she was having so much emotional turmoil and so much physical pain and going through such an intense story. It was just nice to have those little moments of just a good little human being a nice little human. As for the things I didn't like as much, I talked about it earlier in my check-ins, and that is how technical the book got at times. I do think it was an interesting concept to have the skills that Jack had and that Gabe had and how that informed the story and the things that were being talked about, but it does just get overly technical for my liking at times. I felt like there were many scenes where we were reading every single individual thought process and every single physical movement, and I'm not necessarily a reader who needs it drawn out that exactly for me. I'm okay being a little more vignette style. I'm okay being a little more jumpy around of like, this happened and then we're gonna go do this. So if you're a reader who likes to be really immersed in the technical details of what's happening, maybe you're really gonna like that, but for me it was just a little bit too much for me. And then also just generally the concept of what this book was zeroing in on, I did not mean to have a pun there, but of what this book was really about, which really results in a lot of the explanation for why things happened the way they did in this story. That was just not something that personally interested me that much. Like the final explanation of it all, I was just like, okay, that's also a little bit overly technical for me. And I think it's an interesting concept. It's something I've never heard of before, and I won't spoil it in this section for you. I talked about it in the spoiler section. I've never heard of this concept, and I even work kind of in the tech world, so I was kind of surprised that I've never heard of this. And I think it could be interesting. I don't really think it was necessarily made that interesting in this book. And so for me, that makes the mystery and thriller part of it fall a little bit flat, because the whole time you're trying to solve this mystery with Jack, and then you do. And for me, it just wasn't that, I hate to say exciting, because it doesn't have to be exciting. I feel bad for saying that because of what you're following in this book and how like gruesome it was a lot of the times. But I don't know, it just wasn't that satisfying of an explanation for me. Maybe we didn't go deep enough on it. Maybe we didn't see it enough in different ways in the story. Maybe it would have helped to have Gabe's perspective and flashbacks in some way to see him exploring this a little bit. But the way it came out in this story just didn't really do a ton for me. One other thing I'll mention that didn't bother me, but I think it could bother some readers, is this book does get a little bit repetitive, because you are just following this character whose journey kicks off in the beginning, and then the rest of the story is kind of the same sort of thing over and over again of her trying to find somewhere safe to be, her trying to solve something, her running into people, her trying to get somewhere over and over. For me, that felt incredibly realistic, and so I understood. I'm like, oh yeah, this makes sense. Like, this is the natural progression of where things would go. But for readers who are looking for a lot of excitement, this is not going to be like the action-packed popcorn thriller that you might be looking for. So overall, with my rating, I'm landing on a 3.5 out of 5 stars for this. I did have a good time with it. I did really like our main character, and it was an enjoyable read, but it didn't necessarily bring anything too new to the table for me. It's not going to be a new favorite for me. It won't be super memorable for me, but it wasn't a bad time. I would say if you like Ruth Ware, then it's probably worth reading. I would say if you're interested in trying out Ruth Ware, this probably is not where I would recommend starting with her works. Most people seem to agree that The Turn of the Key is one of our favorites of hers, our being the collective whole of Ruth Ware's readership, but this one did also feel just a little bit different from what she's done in the past. It wasn't as a murder mystery, it was a little bit more of a crime procedural slash action thriller, and so I don't feel like this one gives you the best indication of if you will want to read more books from her. But I think if you've read books from her before, it's kind of fun to read something a little bit different from Ruth Ware, and again, I don't think you're going to hate your time reading it. So that's it for my final thoughts on 0 Days. Let me know down in the comments below if you have read this book and what you think of it, or let me know if I convinced you to pick it up. But that is it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye!